I'm Leola Ohm. My maiden name was Kuma, and I lived on a farm just northeast of Elkhorn. Always have attended all 12 grades of school here in Elkhorn.
My name is Eddie Ohm. I came to Elkhorn in '35. I went to school at Leola, Nebraska, and came here to Elkhorn to try to make a living for myself because during the Depression years things were pretty bad, and that's how come I landed in this vicinity.
Okay, and can I ask you what your birthdays are and your age?
My birthday? June. I was born June 28, 1922, so I'm past 80. I'll be 81 in June.
Okay.
I was born September the 1st, 1915, and I'm 87.
Okay. And you already told us how you came to live in Elkhorn, but how did you come to live in Elkhorn?
I lived on a farm just 2.5 miles northeast. So I was supposed to attend myself and 4 sisters. We were to go to a country school. We were in that district, but we always came to Elkhorn because we had a grandmother living here in Elkhorn, and we could stay there when our roads were closed, like for 3 weeks at a time during a snowstorm.
All right. And would you like to tell us a part of Elkhorn you grew up in?
I didn't grow up in town,
Oh, yeah,
you see. I grew up on the farm, but my grandmother lived what is now 532 Pacific Street.
Okay. Can you tell us what Elkhorn looked like a really long time ago, how it's changed? Can you just tell us what it used to look like?
Yes, there are a number of changes, and I'm amazed how it has grown and how the population has increased. Well, first of all, when I came here in 1935, the sign had said 429 people, and it was strictly a country town, and it was very slow. Much more people, they didn't move near as fast as they do today. And as the time went by, and I worked on the railroad, and I stayed with a lady by the name of Mrs. Harry Leesenberg at her boarding house, and she made my lunch pail up for $1 a day, and I had a sleeping room, and I worked on the section, and I got 38 cents an hour. And I stayed with that, and then I finally got on an extra gang, and Elkhorn was not growing very much at that time. And then after I worked for a man right here. Here's a picture of Melvin Bay when he was a very young boy, and his dad's name was Henry Bay, and they had a Chevrolet business. And I could get a job there driving a tank wagon truck and working on cars and with another mechanic. And so I did that, and 1940 we got married, and then we lived up in a small apartment, 1 room in Elkhorn here. It was Mrs. Hess's place at that time, and I worked for Harry Danker. I drove milk truck, and I also worked on the section during the time that we lived there, and Elkhorn still was a small Elkhorn. So after the war, I got home in 1946, then Elkhorn started to grow, and it just kept growing and growing, and now it is quite a large #1 city.
Thank you. Now, I know you have some pictures, so if you want to just show the pictures to the camera and explain a story that you'd like to go with.
I know all of these in the class of 1922 that I'm holding. And Lily Cook Rolfs was the one who donated many of these pictures. And of course, William Hulling Lumber Yard, and Lily Kerner. The Kerners were prominent. In fact, her brother helped build our house 52 years ago. So I know all the names, but it would take me a long time to pick them out. when they're young.
Did you go to that school that's in this picture?
Yes, I went to the old school for 3 years, and that was down where our city maintenance is
Yeah.
now. It was a park. In fact, big bands played down at the pavilion down there, and we danced down there. I loved it.
25 cent admission.
25 cents?
Well, probably not that
Yeah.
in those days. But I was going to say, this had 4 rooms downstairs for the grades.
Yeah.
And then the upstairs, and then they built on another room for a typing room, bookkeeping room, and that was to the west of this big white school. Of course, then we moved to the brick schoolhouse, and there again, we had the 4 rooms downstairs, and so I finished my schooling there.
You want to zoom in on this so you can
Yeah.
see what she's talking about? So you're not confused. Okay. Now you have some more.
I do some more of those who attended the high school in 1914, and that's a little bit. I know the names, and I know many of the people whose children attended with me, you know.
Yeah.
The Quinns and Cease, and there were a lot of people I knew. In their later years, that
Yeah.
is. And Miss Grace Pfeiffer, she was my first and second grade teacher.
Oh my God.
And she passed away only a couple of years ago. She was up in her 90s. And we went to the funeral home when she was there. She was one of my first and second grade teachers. And this was a little bit later, in 1921 and 22. I know all the names, but of course I knew them when they were older. It's a sketch of our old schoolhouse down at the park. And of course the newer many buildings have been built since then.
Do you want to share some of your pictures?
Yes, might mention a little bit about this picture of this train they had that would come through Elkhorn, and it always come through with a very heavy load of freight cars, and it's called the 9000. It's a big engine, and it was one of the biggest ones as far as a regular locomotive, and they had to reinforce the bridge at Waterloo, Nebraska, because it would not carry the weight of this big engine, so they thought it might collapse. And that train was running on the tracks here when we worked on the railroad as a section hand, and I worked on an extra gang, and that was one of the main engines that they used on the Union Pacific. Later on, they come through with what they call a 3900 engine, which had 4 cylinder drivers on the side, 2 on each side, and it was used to pull the passenger train, and that would come through Elkhorn here at a speed of about 70 to 80 miles an hour. And it was a very good luxurious train, and that's how people got around. But eventually they discontinued that and done away with that, and now we're down to diesel engines, and we are strictly pulling coal and grain and such as that. That's one of the pictures. And this one down here is a bunk car down there, and that's what we slept in 1937, I think it was. And we would sleep in that at night, and when the trains would go by, they vibrate the ground in the car so bad, and all the cinders would come through the roof and fall in our face while we were sleeping on our bunks. And that wasn't a very healthy thing for us, and it was always dirty, and you couldn't keep clean at all. But that's how we slept. And then we had what they call a commissary car, and that was the one that gave us the food, and they had clothing for us, and that's how we would get our meals, and then we would go back to our bunk car, and then they'd take us out on the job for 8 hours, and we'd work for 38 cents an hour. And that is, so here's another picture of that 9,000 down there, see? But there's many more things you could talk about, and I don't know if this would be of interest to you. This building right here was at the tornado of 1913. And I wasn't born yet, but that's where my mother's mother was killed at Utan, Nebraska in 1913. It picked her house up and carried it, they thought about a quarter of a mile, and dropped it, and of course it killed her. And such things like that haven't happened in the later years now, but we do have enough tornadoes. So that might be of interest that you can remember that. That Bill Walk thing there, that would be Old Man Bill Walk. I mean, Fred's dad, you know.
And Henry Rasmus, I
Yeah.
remember him and where they lived, just to the south of the brick schoolhouse.
What was the story that you were talking about, the Santa Claus thing? Or?
Well, that's what they mentioned out there, that Leonard Peterson remembered him as walking the streets, and they called him Santa Claus, and then he had a pack on his back. That's an axe, I believe, that he, why sure, there's all wood. They're cutting down that tree, I suppose. He has a dog on his land. Fallen Giant was later cut up into 15 cords of wood. And they both came to Nebraska in 1875.
That's a long time ago.
I think that would be the father of the Fred Villwalk who
That's
lived
the
out
father
here
of
on
Fred,
Dodge.
yeah.
And there's still a Fred Villwalk living out in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, he's a younger man.
His, this would be his grandfather.
I believe this is that old hall up there, isn't it, up there on the corner?
Dorothy
Yeah,
Lee.
that's the front. And just a little bit about that, when my dad was a young man, he played in a band at Millard, Nebraska with the group, and Dad said that he played for dances in this hall.
And is this it right here?
Yes.
That's it. He played for dances in that hall. That was very, very early in
It's in the,
1900.
no, it's in the 1890s.
Yeah, it might be way back further, but that's where they used to dance, and as I mentioned, they started playing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were still playing when the sun came up the next day.
It's amazing.
This might be the Gregerson store on Pacific Street. Oh, it's the Locker Apartments.
It's Locker now.
Yeah, that's where we used to buy our hardware.
Yeah.
Up in here, George Cunningham, and then we bought the business from him, and we had the business down on Main Street in a building that isn't there anymore. So we bought the hardware.
That was after the war, 1947.
Yep.
I came back from the service, and we started a hardware store. And we had that bottle gas business, a franchise from Omaha, Blau Gas Company, and we finally got into the bulk gas. That's where you have the big tanks, and you sell that by the gallon. And then finally in '65 we sold everything. We had both elevators at one time too down here, both of these elevators. And of course they're not in operation anymore because you can't have an elevator unless you're a big operator. You can't, you'd never be able to hold it.
This is the Gregerson home right here. Mrs. Nolte lived over this.
It's so amazing how, like, if you look at that street and you compare it to, like, the cars that are sitting there and the cars now, it's just so
It
weird
is
how everything is
very
changing.
much so. Really different, isn't it?
Yeah. Take a look. What I was talking about, the car was, like, right there, and then the street and everything. Do you have any more pictures or something?
All
I
right.
think that's all.
That's about-
Okay, well, then there's this.
Where's that Danker Hall thing at? There.
Right on there.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people what the Dinker Hall was?
Yeah.
Well, it was above the other drugstore and above the drugstore and the hardware store.
There was a hardware store.
Bowling
Well, and
alley.
then there was an Ellis Chalmers dealership there, way on the south end, and of course, that all burned up along with the hall when it burned.
That's where the truck exploded.
That's where the truck, they had a fellow there he put his tractors in there. He's pulling semi-trailers. He backed it in there, and he had this rented for quite some time. And they don't know whether it sprung a diesel leak and that the battery shorted it out, but somehow the fire started. And it was a very oily place. There was a lot of oil. And it took that whole thing in the hall upstairs and just burned it all out, everything. And now, of course, it's just a vacant area. There's nothing there now.
And of course, we did a lot of dancing up there. And
They had big bands.
And he played in bands up there.
I played up there a lot.
And you played the drums?
I played drums for lots of different groups.
When he first got out of the service, I should have brought that little clippy. First got out of the service, he had learned to play the piano accordion.
Oh, yeah.
And before the war, he always played the button accordion, but he had learned to play the piano accordion. And so he had his own little band from about 1946 until 53. And then he thought he better tend to business and
Well, our business was taking our time.
taking the time.
Then I played with other groups and just,
He
I was
was called
gone
on
pretty
all
every
the time
Saturday
to
night.
play drums, so he did that for the rest of his life, until just a few years ago.
And I played in combo groups too, with 2 and 3 people, played a lot of time. And then finally it got to the point where the people I was playing with, they didn't stay together anymore. One lady was a keyboard girl, and she was real good, and she got married and moved to Leavenworth, Kansas. And the other guy that played the alto sax, he didn't want to play anymore, so then left me alone. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be alone, I just as well play the piano accordion. And I've done that ever since now for many, many years.
Now this was the hall
Yeah.
up above, and of course the drugstore and the hardware store were down below. But this Mr. Chamberlain, he had his feet frozen. I think he was a school teacher when he was a young man, and he had his feet frozen in the storm of blizzard of 1888. So I can remember him walking with his small shoes, and his feet were just real short because he had his feet frozen. And there it is when it was under construction in 1919. But yes, we remember old Mr. Chamberlain too. It was Dale Halstead's dad,
This is
granddad.
the hall up top, and that's where it's at. Do you have any other interesting stories? Or?
Well, I remember how thrilled we were when we got paved streets here in town,
Yeah, everything was gravel.
everything mud.
Mud, yeah, we had a lot of mud in Elkhorn.
See, and we lived at the corner of Main and Douglas Street. As you go up to West Ridge,
Yeah.
we lived right up in a brick house on the
Yeah.
southeast corner. And the first years we were there, everything was mud in front of us and side of us. So we had to pay to have paving put in front of our house and to the side. And the Galloways, Dr. Galloway had built his house just before us. And
Julius Schultz, the mayor, had a place there, and Ed Sager used to be at the bank. He had a place behind us.
so we were lucky when we got, that was in the 50s sometime.
And it might be of interest to you know that at the time we were looking for some ground when we were in the hardware store. George Cunningham sold out to us. He owned the hardware store. And then he had some land adjacent to his house, on the west side of his house, there was what they call a double lot. It was an 80 by 128 at that time. It is 132 now, I think. Anyway, that whole lot, they had hogs or sheep there, and they had fencing in there, and 32-inch hog fence in there, and there was a whole bunch of trees there where our house sits. And I worked at that every night after I closed the hardware store and cut that all up by hand and hauled it all away. And cleared it all off so I could dig a hole to put our basement in. And that's how we got our house up in there. And then we bought that lot, and I was doing plumbing work, and I did a lot of other sheet metal work, and I did a lot of odd jobs just to save money, you know, because things were kind of bad. So we had our house built, and we've been there now 52 years, and it still serves us well, and so ain't much else you can do with right now. At our older age, we have to be kind of careful what we do.
My uncle built all 3 brick homes that are there on that corner. And he lived across the street from us for years and years. Uncle and Aunt lived across the street.
Well, what I was,
So-
oh my god.
No, that's
Well, when I was thinking, when you were talking about like the paving the roads and everything, like the old Lincoln Highway, was that like really famous or?
yes, it was.
Oh, yeah. It was a very busy road at one time.
On Sunday afternoon, kids would like to sit along the side of the road there as on Center Street as it made the curve and came west out of town. We'd sit there and wave at everybody because we thought it was so neat to have a name, you know, that was from coast to coast, that Lincoln Highway.
Another big change that came about in the past 10, 12 years was the park area on the west side of town, off of Center Street, going west out of town. And that started very small, and where they actually started was a farm that Otto Benke and Louise Benke owned, and they sold that farm to the city, and the city has made that now into a complete park, and they've added to it, and then it's called the Tahasuka Park now, you know. And so that has quite a change, and that all used to be farmland right there where that park is at. Completely, just all farmland. So that's quite a change. And of course, the main street of Elkhorn is not too busy anymore because all your activity is to the east, over in Dix Hill Rise area.
Okay, well, do you have anything else? I mean,
Oh, there's lots, but we take up too
Should
much
have
here.
brought some pictures out of my scrapbook. I'm sure these get back out there.
Oh, something that else we might just mention, I thought that I give the school credit for us veterans of World War II. See, when I was at Utah, Nebraska, my mother and dad, they couldn't send us to high school. I didn't have any high school. I only had 8th grade of school. So when I came to Elkhorn here, and then we were married a number of years, and then I got drafted in 1942 when I went to Europe. Came back in 46, and then they came out with this here diploma from the various school districts. And District 10 here had this program. So anybody that they could help in that part for a diploma, they called me up, and a few others called up, and I got my diploma from the Elkhorn School here a couple, 3, 4 years ago. So I actually haven't graduated, but I do have my diploma.
He went through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, I was glad to do that, and Dr. Breed, I think is his name, he was very nice about it, and he gave me my diploma. And they had the entire Coliseum where they play basketball. They had that full of people that morning.
Well, all the streets.
All the school. So that was kind of nice to have that presentation.
okay, well, I want to thank you very much for coming down here and taking your time to share your history and stories with us. So I guess that's it.
Well, thank you.
Well,
I'm glad we could give you some history of the...
I'm going to get my scrapbooks out and try to get some pictures made some old pictures that I have. Like, I have postcard-sized pictures from up at Mount Michael, where my grandparents lived there. See, they moved there in 1902, in March of 1902. And I have one aunt still living. Was my mother's sister, and she's going to be 104 in
March 18th.
March 18th. But she remembers the tornado. See, she was going to school then, and they're District 41, and that school was blown away, but the piano bench stayed right in place. The piano blew away, but the piano bench stayed right in the spot. Isn't that amazing?
I don't know how I could do that, but it did, I guess.
And I have the write-up of that story too, so I've got to get some of that to Patsy.
And one more thing I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Do you remember when FDR came to Elkhorn?
President Roosevelt, you mean?
Well, I don't know, FDR.
Yeah, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yeah.
He was president when
He
the
was
war
going
broke
to
out.
come through by our school, and we were all waiting. We were all waiting for him to come, for the car to come by. But they changed their mind and went down to the Sumnick Farm. And I
1938.
guess they were running a little late, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So you didn't ever get to see him?
No, I didn't get to see it. Mhm.
Okay, well, I just...
So. But,
Okay.
Well, thank you.